let's start our workshop here. Again, it's going to be one, maybe two parts. Um, we're taking it easy because I need to tonight. Uh, I've every day I've been pushing myself to be bicycling a little bit more, a little bit more. If not further, then at least just be out longer. And it's been good. It's sort of the good sort of sore afterwards. The weather up here has been beautiful for it. Very much not vampire weather. Um, all right, well, we are going to get into Everyday Heroes and approach it now from the side of the screen as a GM. And both sides of that screen do play by the same rules, though there's a different set of responsibilities to invoke. In fact, on Tuesday, last night, was a very good example of that. Sierra Echo, who's playing Kincaid, took it upon himself to look at what you could do with a light machine gun. Machine guns were provided to the party, but beyond the mechanics of them, there was nothing that I told them to do with them. Could I have suspicions of it? Of course. And would I take that off the table of happening? Of course not. That was part of the fun. So it was up to them to use what was given to them and what they chose. And so there's rules on attacking and damage and whatever. For tonight, though, I want to talk more uniquely, because I can use machine guns as well, and in fact I did. Though it was just a very simple, I have my characters that have them, they're doing things with them that were necessary. I wasn't doing anything fancy last night with them anyway. So, the unique responsibility of the GM, one of those anyway, is about combat. About encounters, and while balance doesn't necessarily exist, it does. There are themes. That there is a general idea for arranging a combat that just won't be you going, haha, I totally threw 100 dragons at you and you died, ha 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 ha. That's not really fun. Or if it's only fun for the GM, why is anyone else playing in the story? And why isn't the GM being an author who gets total control of the world and the circumstances in it? Now, there is an entire section of this book about GMing the game. There's a lot here that I'm not going to get into. Just like in the beginning, when we were talking about the general approach. What is role-playing? What is a D8? There are things here that are going to be very obvious, and if you have questions on them, because I don't make it obvious or it's not explained with everything else, please ask up above here if you're here with me live, or you can leave a comment on it if you're watching this video later. There is a lot of good advice, engaging the senses and other things, and I can talk about what I try to do to make that happen. But for right now, we are going to get into how Everyday Heroes approaches mechanically balancing an encounter. And then I can discuss a little bit about what I was doing with the encounters that were presented so far. Boom, 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 boom. Where are you? I think I scrolled. I did scroll past it. All right, Chapter 15, Opponents and Allies. We're on page 349 if you have the book yourself or the PDF yourself. Heroes meet all manner of opponents, allies, combatants, and creatures in their adventures. To keep matters simple, non-player characters, NPCs, are presented by simplified stat blocks. So you get a breakdown of that. This is going to look very familiar to D&D stat blocks because they share a very common ancestor. An NPC's type speaks to its fundamental nature. Certain abilities, class talents, and other effects in the game may interact in special ways with NPCs of a particular type. But type has no special rules of its own. You see this in other systems. Though, I mean, do robots need to breathe? Should that be stated? Maybe some do, maybe some don't. This is a broader classification. You find something like this in D&D. Defense, hit points, armor, if they're wearing any kind of armor. Speed is what you'd expect. Ooh. Sorry again if you're just joining. I'm not uninterested. I just did a lot of biking outside today. Well, bicycling, I guess. I'm not on a motorcycle. Nothing against them. I don't have one, but I also get a better workout if I'm pumping my legs. All right. Now, something that is different from D&D and that I really like. The role of a particular creature in the stat block listed here in the core rulebook. To help categorize NPCs, they are labeled with a variety of roles that the NPC can best fill in a combat encounter. Are they fodder? Simple and can be used in large numbers against higher level players. Hulks have a lot of hit points but low defense. Killers do more damage. Leaders buff their allies but make suitable bosses when supported by allies. Loners are self-sufficient and often complex. They make suitable bosses either alone or with backup. Melee NPCs better up close. Now, this... Oh, sorry. We didn't add that to the worksheet from our last session, our party examination, but in other workshops, we would assign we would assign roles or labels or descriptors to the party members to try and get an idea of what they do and how they operate in combat situations or even in general. Some examples would be, is this the party's face? Is this the party's brains of the operation? Is this person a magic user, a meleeer? Is this person a dedicated healer? Things like that to at least have a quick reference to what can happen at any particular point in time. Because what if the party splits and you might want to, as the GM, DM, or ST, switch stuff up to provide more of a challenge, or to say, well, I was going to do things this way. I really love what the party's doing by splitting, and it makes complete sense. So I'm still going to challenge them. I'm just going to do it in a different way. And how can I do that? And then you can take a look at the tags of the two party members that went off on their own. So you have shadows, supports, and tanks. Equipment is listed. It's there. Special traits, because the enemies can also have powers like the PCs can. Like Night Mage employs some genius in his plans with Fragment. And there are enemies who can do similar things as well. This is all pretty straightforward, though. How many times per long rest, short rest, if it needs to recharge. And you can see NPCs by challenge rating. Challenge rating 0, 1/8. It goes up from here. and then we come into the modern day NPCs. I'm not going to go over each one. I'm not reviewing. I'm not going to, just say, oh, the thief, 2 out of 10 would never run at this table. Whoa. But you can see that they all have fun little abilities. They're presented very similarly to the players. It's an easy to read stat block for both sides of the screen. And just as you find in the DMG and or the Monster Manual, there's tips on creating new allies and opponents here. Decide how much of a challenge you want your NPC to be. This will determine how powerful it is, informing the rest of your choices. Each of the values on the tables below is an average and can be tweaked up or down as described below. Generally, if you increase one value, you should lower another, but a slight leaning toward more or less powerful overall is fine. So this is not a fine-tuned machine, neither is challenge rating in D&D. However, this system does go up to 10 for the levels of the player characters. And so you will have more of a consistent application of mechanics and rules. Because in D&D, after level 10, things really do start getting wonky. Not that they are not fun, though the options available are, especially for a magic user, are just incredible. And it could become difficult for a dungeon master or a game master to continue to offer the thrill of the hunt or the challenge of something if there's a bunch of magic items and spells, or they've made contacts in every nation by this point and are just getting information with not a lot of extra effort. So defense value for NPC, you can modify this value by up to plus or minus 3 for NPCs if you want it to be harder or easier to hit. If you've chosen a role, here is your suggestion for a Hulk, a killer, fodder. And you get the general guidelines. The average damage the NPC does in a round, assuming it hits with all its attacks with its primary weapons. You can add or subtract up to 50% damage for deadlier or less dangerous NPCs. Remember that this value includes the damage of every attack the NPC makes, as well as any special abilities it has that improves its damage. Once you've chosen that role, then should have 25 to 50% higher damage. You have a lot of wiggle room. Make these fun and compelling enemies, not just... fodder is fodder, and that is fun too. But don't feel like, I have to micromanage everything. I have to strictly balance everything. Meticulous consistency. The NPCs that appear in this book, and those that will be printed later, are designed for consistency and usability. When you need an enemy for a one-time fight, you don't need to worry about anything except what's above. But if you want to make sure your stat blocks stand up to exacting scrutiny, here are a few extra optional things to consider. An NPC's hit points are the average roll for their hit dice. Again, you see this in D&D. I'm not going to go through the minutia. It's here. If you want me to go back and read something, I can. Tweak their proficiency bonus, their ability scores. So I'm going to do a quick snap back to the beginning. because before I move on to the next topic, I wanted to make sure. There we go. I believe combat structure is what I was wanting. I went too far. Yeah, because that's chase, DC's by level. Ah, here, nope. Designing encounters, 264. Here we go. When planning adventures, a GM can break up the challenges the characters will face into individual encounters. Typically, an encounter takes place in a single location and involves one main challenge or a set of interconnected challenges. Combat, social challenges, and investigating an area are all examples of encounters. Encounters can bleed into one another, but characters typically deal with them one at a time as they progress through the story. Most of the content of an adventure is contained within encounters. The time in between encounters is often fast-forward time, such as traveling or resting, or downtime, none of which requires much planning on your part. They simply need to be aware of when the characters are likely to have time to rest or shop between encounters. Modern action often involves characters getting into fights during an adventure. Combat encounters are highly structured, using the rules documented in Chapter 9. GMs and players alike should look to that chapter to familiarize themselves with the basics of combat. When creating a combat encounter, first the GM decides who opposes the characters. Thematically, this can be anyone or anything that makes sense for the story. On the mechanical side, and this is always the nitty-gritty, the GM also determines the encounter difficulty and selects enemies that can pose an appropriate level of threat. When building an encounter of average difficulty, all the GM needs to do is count the number of heroes, then pick a number of NPCs whose challenge rating in combat adds up to about that number. Find out how many heroes an NPC is worth, find the character's level in the opponent values by level and CR table, then find the number in the column matching the NPC's CR challenge rating. For example, for a second level team, a CR 1/4 NPC is worth 1/2 of a hero. Against a team of 5 heroes of second level, 10 challenge rating 1/4 opponents would thus make an average encounter. Meanwhile, a CR1 NPC is worth 3 characters of second level, allowing a GM to build an average encounter out of 1 CR1 opponent plus 4 CR 1/4 opponents. An average encounter will require some effort from the team to overcome, but unless they have been run ragged, there is little chance of them actually losing such a fight. For the encounter whose difficulty is more or less than average, the GM simply selects NPCs whose total value is higher or lower than normal. Alright, let's take a look. If our team level is... well, you know what? Yep, alright, enjoy Pathfinder Night Mage. For our Apples to Oranges team, we have a team of four heroes, and they are level 3. And so that is going to be, hang on, I'm trying not to mix up the tables. My eyes are darting back and forth here. Yeah, so we have a second level team, a CR 1/4 NPC. So there's our 1/4 is worth 1/2. Yeah, because if our team level is 2, then the NPC level is worth 1/2 of a hero. So for a level 3, a CR1 NPC here. Well, I have to... That's highlighting everything going down here. Anyway, so we look at this, and we see that a CR1, whatever, monster or other person for a team level of 3 is worth 1.5 heroes. So if you want an average encounter, then you can use that as a reference point for balance and general difficulty. As you would find in 5th edition, this is a general guideline. This is a... Well, feel it out, because crits happen on both sides of the screen, and crit misses and critical successes as well. But if you weigh the kind of encounter you want, for example, a trivial encounter, an encounter with a value below 2/3 of the team's opponent budget is trivial, posing little challenge to the characters or players. Use such encounters sparingly, as they can easily bog down the game with unnecessary combat. An easy encounter, an encounter with a value as low as 2/3 of the team's opponent budget, is easy. These encounters let the players and characters feel cool and powerful, but might cost them a small amount of resources. Hard encounter. An encounter with a value of up to 50% higher than the team's opponent budget is hard. Hi, Living Meme. I am doing very well, thank you. Night Mage is running some Pathfinder. Kragar is hanging out, and I'm glad that you're joining us as we're talking about creating encounters in everyday heroes, and maybe even discuss how it measures up to the challenge rating system in D&D 5e. I do have those books available if we need to do some comparison. Now, when I was giving a little bit of a roughing up in the first session of Apples to Oranges, we had one level 3 character here, and I threw a well, I'll find it and I'll show you an example here. Yep, we talked about the roles. This is a little bit more expanded. Again, for organizational sake, if 4th edition D&D had this more as a mechanic in a way to craft an encounter. Now, 4th edition had a lot tighter math when it came to their challenges and what you could expect to output or receive. But this isn't a hard and fast rule. There's nothing saying, well, if I have a shadow, then I need to also have either a ranged or 2 fodder or something along those lines. We got the space bad guy, saved the space casino owner, then extorted the space casino owner for 80% of the cash in his vault. Then shot him for the remaining 20. We're doing pretty good for space bounty hunters up till the end part. What happened at the end, Sierra, that everything just... you went from capturing the bad guy to becoming the bad guy? Sierra, what happened? Grouping roles determine whether an NPC works better alone or as part of a mass attack. Fodder NPCs are easy to run. They can be used in large groups against higher level heroes, as they typically make simple attacks and have no abilities that recharge or resources to track. Characters who can hit multiple enemies at once will shine against fodder NPCs, while those who specialize in dealing large amounts of damage to single targets might struggle and could get overwhelmed. Loners excel at fighting on their own or with only a little backup. They are usually complicated in their mechanical setup, make multiple attacks, or possess abilities that recharge or have limited use. Heroes who deal a lot of damage to one enemy will like fighting loners, while characters who focus on damaging multiple enemies might have a harder time. Loners make good boss enemies, whether alone or with allies. When a fight breaks out, it's not just the forces on the enemy side that determine how tough things get. This section covers other factors that can affect the challenge of a combat encounter. If the characters have NPC allies in a fight, don't count them as additional characters when determining the difficulty of an encounter. Rather, look up their value on the opponent's CR table as with enemy NPCs, but subtract that value from the encounter value instead of adding it. Environment and terrain. The location of an encounter can easily affect its difficulty. We saw this with our Everyday Heroes game last night. Terrain doesn't provide exact math as NPCs do, but the GM and the players should keep the following things in mind. Better cover for the characters makes an encounter easier, while better cover for their enemies makes an encounter harder. Enemies who have long-range attacks and start at a distance make for a harder encounter, especially if the space between the characters and their foes features little to no cover. Enemies who focus on ranged attacks and are encountered in enclosed spaces make an easier encounter, while melee-focused enemies in the same environment create a harder encounter. A choke point, a single location that all combatants must get through to move across the battlefield, makes an easier encounter. If the characters are outnumbered, but a harder encounter. A mistype in the PDF here. If the characters are outnumbered, they're a harder encounter trying to press forward. Smart enemies. This is where we get into concepts like Tucker's kobolds. Smart enemies can adjust the difficulty of an encounter by taking cover, focusing fire on one hero at a time, staying out of reach of melee characters, or any other tactics that make them individually more dangerous. At the other extreme, if the enemies barrel in, ignore potential cover, attack whoever's in front of them at any given moment, go toe-to-toe with melee specialists, or otherwise make bad tactical choices, they'll be easier to deal with. It's hard to assign numbers to tactical superiority, but tactics are extremely easy to adjust during a fight. If things start to go badly for the characters, the GM might have an enemy slip up. Likewise, for a team that consistently takes down threats with ease, a GM might want to increase the challenge by planning out the enemy's movements and tactics more carefully. The modern world features powerful, high-tech weapons which don't take significant training or skill to use. A GM should keep the following balance issues in mind when deciding what weapon limitations to place on heroes, if any, and how to stage combats so everyone has a good time. By and large, guns in Everyday Heroes are more dangerous than the game's non-firearms options. Both because of their solid damage and because characters can employ them from a great distance. A hero armed with a kitchen knife simply won't present the same level of danger as one armed with a military assault rifle and hand grenades. Melee-based heroes can choose strong abilities to help them compete, but there aren't many ways to use their fists from 100 yards away. Guns always provide an edge in modern combat. That said, the GM can always try to stage fights in environments where melee characters have reasonable opportunities to close distance and get into the fray. This is something I wasn't sure if Bernard was going to do last night. Big Slam Pilots Bernard. I wanted to give him at least the ability or the prompt, like, do you want to, I don't know. I was kind of hoping he might hop out of the Humvee equivalent, the sand dog named Casimir. That he'd hop out of Kaz, and he would just go and just tackle someone to the ground, or give him a good punching. Make sure the environment features sufficient cover. Now, in last night, the party had cover in the vehicle. The vehicle took the brunt of the damage instead of the party members. Probably better to have your vehicle hit by a rocket than your face. You can also stage fights in enclosed spaces such as a warehouse or parking garage, though the GM must be wary of hindering characters who specialize in long-range weapons. Another equipment strategy the GM can employ is to match enemy weapon types with the types of weapons the heroes carry. If the team features an equal mix of melee and ranged combatants, arming enemies in a similar way can help ensure everyone has an opponent they can square off against. Now, Sierra, who's playing Kincaid, Sierra's a level 3 character, meaning a CR 1/2 NPC or monster would be a one-on-one, easy encounter. Or I guess they're calling it an average encounter. And if we take a look at the monster that I used against Sierra Echo, because I was experimenting as a GM, there's a difference between reading this and using it and what actually plays out. Maps, we use maps on Roll20. That's fine, not worried about that. And we can also get into chase encounters, as we had a brief one. Sierra, and I don't know if Night Mage is listening on the side, I wanted more of a chase last night, which has nothing to do with you all as players. I wanted there to be a little bit more heavier of a chase. The motorcycles would have leaned more intrinsically into a chase with some combat elements. The Humvee being able to tank things better was more of a combat with some chase elements. I wish we had more time to actually lengthen the chase, but I'm still I'm happy with what happened. And even though you might grumble and go, you blew up our car and we just made it out of the boat. I did, and there might be reasons why. The least of which Kincaid is able to fix machines. Yeah, but you gotta be a big damn hero, Sierra. So let's go over here to the now Kincaid. There was a bit of a crazy person in an alleyway behind the gym who was shambling up on you. You thought perhaps a zombie, and whether or not that's true, there's something else behind. Now, let's see. Was it the punk that I used? I think it was not. No. It wasn't the punk for you. It wasn't the punk for you. It was the cultist. You had Kincaid fought against a cultist, and that was your one-on-one for your tutorial. To not only to let you use legs. Now, if you all out there in the audience weren't aware, Sierra is Sierra's playing an engineer style character, so he has a robot buddy, and Kincaid and Legs fought against a cultist. So we have a CR 1/2, which is decent for a one-on-one. It didn't kill either Legs or Kincaid, but it did rough up Legs, and I don't know how much longer Kincaid would last if his robot buddy couldn't answer the robot roll call. Yep, he did get really close. Yep. The next session is this coming Tuesday, Living Meme. Our RP, our role-playing game has been the past 2 Tuesdays, and the conclusion is this coming Tuesday. So, with this, Sierra Echo, would you say that the cultist, as I presented him, made for an average challenge encounter for you? No, you're fine, Living Meme. You're fine. And what Sierra Echo said above is big damn hero does not equal big dumb hero. Just saying. You reminded me of a phrase. There are old soldiers and there are bold soldiers. There are no old, bold soldiers. But yeah, I used a regular CR 1/2, and now you were asking about a device, and while it's not listed, I mean, there's a ritual dagger, and so this person was trying to knife you. There was a device because that was going to be a clue as to the cult that this person was in. Now the clue wasn't necessarily found, which doesn't matter as much because you did something awesome in that combat. But hopefully you can see where, at least in a one-on-one with a CR 1/2 monster, character, whatever, Kincaid can hold his own, especially if Legs is there, though it was a hairy fight. Fight seemed a bit rough, but mostly because I'm not a close melee fighter, and cultist with a dagger and multi-attack, but we took care of in a roundabout manner. Yep. And, you know, because not everything can be a perfect matchup of, all right, well, I have either a solo character or a party that has these as mixes, and I think that everyone gets a special monster that they fight, and they can only ever fight that monster. I think you did well, and I'm glad that hopefully it kept you closer to the edge of your seat. And it was thrilling. But you can see now, 2 weeks after the fact, what I threw against you was a CR 1/2 monster out of the book, and I believe that is good proof that the chart was correct in that this is an average, like a one-on-one, an average challenge one-on-one. And what the character that you shot at from Casimir last night is also an out of the book from the Monster Menagerie section here. I'll leave it to you to try and figure out what that character could have been, but it was also out of the book, and we got to. While I wanted a longer chase, I'm still happy because we did get to explore the vehicle, more vehicle combat rules, and you all, getting used to that. You're getting to try it out, the weapons platform. You're still going to have a chance in next week's session. It wasn't a one and done, and oh no, the vehicle is destroyed, and all right, I guess that was it. We went through all that for nothing. So Casimir is still with you. And we'll see where he takes you from there. But as you find in other systems, and especially in D&D 5e, this is a... Here are basic stats. If you want to run them in a different way to give them cover, make them more or less intelligent with their own reasons. There's a reason why the cultist acted the way he did in the fight against Kincaid outside of the gym, Sierra Echo. Not just because, mindless combat. There's a reason why this character was becoming mindless. Just because we're in a 3-parter doesn't mean I still can't do something that's... Pardon me. That I still can't do something that's... It has passive world building, environmental world building, or things that you might think about and go, oh, yeah, you know what? Given the other topics that have come up, I think I can understand what was going on with this guy. Yeah, well, you know, that happens when you overcharge a doohickey. Which, by the way, the E-Blast was not a slight against you that it itself wasn't electrical. I needed to make sure that there was a particular point made about the organization and about this device. However, if you find a way to interact with it as if it were an electronic device, I'm open to it. You're welcome to tinker. Just watch out, because as you would understand as an engineer, once the magic smoke is let out of the machine won't beep and boop anymore. So be careful about letting that magic smoke out of your E-Blast. So yep, pretty straightforward. The math on this, probably because it focuses on the first 10 levels, I want to say that the encounter or the stat block would make these slightly harder than vanilla Monster Manual stats from the original Monster Manual. Now, maybe some of the later adventures or the later rule books have tighter or better math on that. In this instance, I would say that if you wanted to run a... Actually, there are like monsters in here. You want to run a T-Rex? This, pardon me, sorry. This T-Rex might hit a little harder or be a little bit more present than one out of the Monster Manual. So, yep, as the GM, determine how much you want to rough up the character, how much you want to tax their resources, and adjust on the fly, either through the crunch of the math or through the situation. Now, if things ever got too hairy for Kincaid's battle with the cultist, or in this case, we had... I was using the Minor Demon stat block in my combat against Bernard. And the reason why I did that, both because there was the safety... the ultimate safety that this was a tutorial. Bernard as a character is tougher. He can take more hits and he can deal out more damage. And this was my experiment in seeing what happens if I throw a CR1 against a level 3 character. Whereas with Kincaid, that was a CR1 half. It was a 2v1, but the 2 is sort of as one, because Kincaid should be going places with legs. But this combat was giving, pardon me, again, sorry, Aaron. I'm not disinterested. I did a lot of biking, and I'm very, I'm very hungry, and I'm very eepy. In the terms of modern youth. So I tried out a minor demon as the possessed tiefling in Bernard's combat, and it still turned out all right. Though we could see that the sweat was ramped up. It was getting Bernard to really to think or to start dipping into his abilities, and he got pretty close to getting knocked out there. Hi, Lucius. I don't get what you're saying. Hello, Iron Chef. There is a part in this book we'll explore that talks about fudging dice rolls. I do not like doing that. If we were playing IRL, a heads-up game, I would roll my dice in front of you all, just as you see me roll my dice openly on Roll20. So I don't like that. If I throw something, even that should be an easy encounter, and there's a lot of undue difficulty, or even it's a case where I grossly misread or did not understand the true output or abilities of something, and it is just stomping the party. I won't pull my rolls, but what I would do is look at the tactics and see if the tactics in a role-playing centered focus. Gosh, sorry everyone. With a role-playing center focus, if those shift, or if it could be explained that something is in need of happening, what that's still contributing to the story, because as we'll read, the story must go on. But I also don't want to just give things, especially because there are some combats where if you don't have the penalty of the penalty or pressure of being unalived in combat, you might not appreciate the character and his or her abilities as much, or you might not use many abilities that you hold in reserve. And as much as I also am that type of RPG player where I say, no, I can't use healing potions because what if I need them? And then, 40 hours later into the RPG, my inventory is just stuffed with potions, and I'm on the bad guy, the final boss. And I say, no, I can't use those potions because what if there's a final form of the bad guy and I need them? All the while, I went out of my way to super grind my levels so that I would not take as much damage and have more healing magic and never be in need of drinking potions. But I always keep in the back of my mind, no, I can't drink potions now. What would the big bad evil guy think of me? Or I might need them for some super final form, even though I got through the entirety of the entirety of the game so far without using them. I've over-leveled myself in that case. So if you can, instead of just pulling punches or not rolling in public or going, I totally forgot that there was a modifier because the cat that you didn't see was there, ran out and clawed his leg, and he said, "What's this?" And he wasn't looking, and now I'm going to roll again, and it's a lower number, you survive. I don't like that. I want there to be consequences, not just as a punishment for players, but to hold me accountable as a GM, because that means that I need to be reading, I need to be comprehending the general intention of the rules, while being trusted to make calls on the fly about a situation. to make calls on the fly about how does the story push on, even in the face of roleplay opportunities, we'll call them. So that's really it for the section on encounter building. If you want a crazed maniac but you want to turn it into a vampire, just take that ability or a couple abilities from the vampire and put it on crazed maniac. It might not even change the challenge rating all that much. Having sunlight sensitivity might not matter if everyone's fighting it. Gosh, man, I really took it out on myself today. That might not make that big of a mathematical difference. Now, if you give the crazed maniac hit point regeneration, it's not going to be a CR1 half anymore. While that could be a vampiric thing to do, that would play with the math some, and the guidelines are in the book for you to consider. But just as you get in the monster manual, there are many monsters in there that have been set up, yes, to be the thing that it says, though also to be unique enough where you can take a particular creature and tweak it in various ways without needing to worry about the math. And then you're empowered with understanding how that engine works in order to truly calculate. Oh gosh. In order to truly calculate how difficult, supposedly, the combat would be. So, yep, for your convenience. And also, once you've run enough combats, a lot of this can become instinctual, where you know the general output or how much an enemy can take. So, if you totally balanced your combat and say, all right, I have enough zombie lickers and zombie dogs, that almost seems repetitive. And the party is absolutely just stomping them. Like Isaac in Dead Space, literally and metaphorically. Then you would, without needing to say, hang on, beep, boop, bop, bop, beep, beep, beep. All right, so there's a 30% chance of blah, blah, blah. You can say, oh, you know what? A couple just miscellaneous zombies up here shamble in. And you can spice up the combat. It's still thematic. Your players wouldn't know any different. But they would still be... you would still be able to do some balancing on the fly while keeping the story going and the action high. And especially when you're trying to present an action movie-style game, wouldn't you know, presenting that level of action is a core component. All right, so that's my speech here. You can practice with building the encounters, or if you do trust the math, then let's go back to that chart really quickly to keep it on screen one more time. I should have memorized where which page that was on. I think it was in 12. Revealing DCs. Chapter 13. Okay, so it might be at the beginning of this. Bop, beep, bop, boop, bop. Optional rules. Yep, we're getting back to it here. I remember this art. There we go. Okay. So, I'll keep this up. I'm going to get up and walk around a little bit. I don't want my body to get too settled. I was yawning a little bit. I might actually drink a caffeinated beverage. I do have a couple left. It's not just the caffeine-free, sugar-free stuff. Give me 5-10 minutes to walk around a bit, do some stretches, and get a little caffeine. And when we come back, I want to go into the chase mechanics a little bit more. And what I encountered, why I did the things I did, the troubles or the opportunities, we'll give that a whole other look as well. And will we have more? I don't know. We'll see. If my body says no, dude, you have to shut down. I'm sending you a message. You're yawning a bunch for a reason. Come on, bro. We'll have to see. I think I have one more section in me, and we'll go from there. So I'll see you in 5 to 10. Okay? I'm gonna walk around, do some stretches, and let's get into a car chase.